Fully engaged. On the horn. Hartford. onthehorn.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Moore. You're listening to Newstalk Tonight on the Horn, onthehorn.com. You can catch us on Twitter, on Skype, Facebook us, whatever. Nonetheless, you can join in on the fun, and you can also occasionally call in. One of these days, I might actually be brave enough to do that. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the first senatorial debate between Chris Murphy and Linda McMahon. We'll also talk about how McMahon lost part of an endorsement. How you do that, I'm not sure. And one of the latest polls came out showing the basic results of the debate. Also to be discussed tonight, can there and will there be justice finally for Richard LaPointe? And will Malloy and the legislature sunset a particular tax? So, first up tonight, the debate. I don't know if any of you actually watched the debate. It was on Channel 3, WFSB in Hartford. The debate itself was recorded in the studios that they have in Rocky Hill. And it was the first time that the candidates have actually been together in one place at the same time. And it's also the first time that at least one of the candidates was answering questions from the press. That was one of the touchy points in the debate, I might add. There was a question that was posed about how the candidates were not being open and transparent and even telling reporters where they were going to be on a given day. Neither of the candidates, surprise, surprise, answered that question. Nonetheless, Republican senatorial candidate Linda McMahon and Democratic senatorial candidate Representative Christopher Murphy, the 5th District Democrat, debated each other before an audience consisting mostly of campaign workers in Rocky Hill at the Channel 3 studios this last Sunday. McMahon looked fairly comfortable in her role as school marm, chastising Murphy twice in the first 15 minutes of the debate, telling him, "Shame on you," in both instances. Murphy gave as good as he got, however, and in the end, it appeared as though Murphy was feeling smooth, calm, cool, and collected, and McMahon was rattled by the give-and-take aspect. To be sure, both candidates had talking points that they had to get out, and they did so, despite warnings from the panel of four hosted by Channel 3's Dennis House. Also, to be sure, the candidates were, well, acting like candidates and answering questions like political candidates, in certain instances not answering them at all. McMahon, however, appeared to try to stick to her script and not really answer the questions posed, and did so more than Murphy, who pointedly noted in at least two instances that he was answering the question posed, and further pointedly noting when McMahon did not. Said he after one answer by McMahon, quote, "There's 90 seconds of I'm not answering your question or telling you what cuts I would make," end quote. And when it came time to answer the question posed about the possibility of supporting gay marriage, McMahon only took about 30 seconds of her allotted 90 to say that she would support Connecticut's position. She also blundered by saying that she would support the American law that supports it. Murphy jumped all over that blunder and used all of his time to say that the existing law, the Defense of Marriage Act, otherwise known as DOMA, runs completely opposite to the position that she was presenting. McMahon responded by saying that she would support repealing DOMA. Murphy also referred in his responses to the presidential debate by taking McMahon to task on his vote for the Affordable Health Care Act and how that was not a $700 billion Medicare benefit reduction. He pointedly noted that it was money that was originally going to insurance companies, basically paying them to deal with Medicare coverages. It was not a direct benefit going to individuals. He also kind of noted how McMahon had made a 47% Romney response to one of the questions. And he also pretty much took McMahon to the shed about her economic plan, calling it a cobbling of the National Republican Party's position. He even went so far as to say that she plagiarized it. That was something that got McMahon's ire up, and that was one of the shame on yous. The general consensus of those who watched the debate, and truth be told, on Sunday I did not, but if you go to Channel 3, to their website, they do have it in full, and I would strongly recommend one and all to take a look at it, because in that you will see how in the very beginning it appeared as though Linda McMahon was very engaged. It appeared as though she was actually answering the questions. It appears as though my co-host is calling in. Hello.
Hello.
One of my co-hosts is calling in. Hello there, Brian.
It's not Jen.
I noticed that.
Jen and I are both voted it in for the last few weeks.
That's a beautiful thing. What's up, man?
I don't know what time she's calling, but here's my thought of the McMahon thing. And I was actually on WFSB.com watching the live stream and doing the chat.
Yeah.
A couple things. One, don't ever go to the WFSB and listen to the chat, because it's like there's like 10 of us in there, and like, you know, 3 of them are there because they're from the Murphy camp.
Right.
3 of them are there from the McMahon camp, and you know, the rest of us, 4 of us, are there just by accident. And it was all just like Shooky, Love, Green Slime. Oh, good point, Chris. Oh, good point. Oh, Linda. Yes, good point, Linda. That was fair. Yeah, yeah. So don't ever do that. But also, I think McMahon started way stronger, and Murphy seemed to kind of. It was like an old car. He kind of had to get revved up and pissed off before he did anything.
My take on that was that she came out more comfortable with trotting out the talking points than was he. He kind of sort of looked like a school kid who was on the 99th try of I will not talk in class again. That was kind of the expression that he had, because he knew that he had to get certain things out there regardless of what the questions were. And for the first 5 or so questions, the candidates kind of sort of answered the question, but really they were getting their talking points in. It was...
Yeah, and I think Linda did much better with the talking points.
Oh, absolutely. She was fluent with that, and she felt comfortable with that, and you could see that comfortableness there. It was after the second shame on you that Chris got ignited.
Yeah, it was almost like Chris is, you know, she's good at doing the talking points, and Chris is better at just letting it all hang out. And he didn't really want to let it all hang out right away, because it was kind of like he was dipping his toe in the water. He didn't really know what to do. He looked uncomfortable. And then he just kind of went for it, and it worked for him. Linda, it was like once we scraped by the surface, there was nothing there. It was nothing but talking points. And, yeah, I don't know. that bode well for him. My fear is, though, that more people see those commercials than will ever see that debate.
What is interesting,
I don't
though,
know if that's good for Chris Murphy.
What is interesting, though, is that a poll of likely voters that came out today, Rasmussen, shows that there was a slight switch, that Murphy had 46 and McMahon had 45, and then when you factored in the leaners, you had a 51% for Murphy and 46% for McMahon. So McMahon only picked up 1% on the leaners, and Murphy picked up on 5%.
Yeah, but the leaners are so, well, I mean, it's a poll. I don't know.
Right.
We'll have to wait and see. I think it's still close. But if she can come out with more of those commercials that make her seem like a real human, because I don't know if you guys know this, breaking news, Linda McMahon is actually not from this planet.
She kind of reminded me of one of those Westworld robots towards the end of the debate. You know, she was becoming confused by some of the questioning, it seemed, and could not figure out how to plug in her talking points. And when she got to the Defense of Marriage Act, she completely shut down. And since when does a candidate leave 60 seconds of time out there? I mean, she just stopped answering the question.
Well,
and you never do that.
Also, I mean, what are you going to say about the Defense of Marriage? What is there to say? Like, I'm either for it or I'm against it. And what do you want? My reasons? And who the hell cares? I mean, this is the other thing is the facilitators of this.
Yeah.
There was one woman from CBS 880.
Yeah.
Who I can't remember her name. She asked the dumbest questions. Like, you know, you got Linda McMahon there. That's worth whatever she's worth, $500 million or some ridiculous number. How has the recession affected you personally? What do you expect the answer to be? You know, like
Murphy's response was perfect, though.
I can't. You know, I'm down to only 6 cars of the 7 that I drive every week. Like, what a dumb question.
Did you hear what Murphy did to her with that one? He pointed out
I work even harder.
But then he turned it on her and said, and she let go of 10% of her workforce that year.
Yeah, but
ouch.
But that's the thing. Like, I don't think that's a good argument because that's a good business decision. In a recession, you got a downside.
It may be, but if she had spent the first half hour touting how she was a job creator, that was a perfect riposte, saying, "Oh, not only you not necessarily a good job creator, but in 2009, you laid off 10% of your workforce."
Yeah, but you know what? I would turn that around and say, yes, 10% of my workforce, sure. I still think I'm a job creator, and I think I'm a job preserver. Instead of this company going down the toilet, like Solyndra, where all of those people are out, I was able to only downsize 10%.
But
how many other companies have downsized less than 10%? Not many.
But Murphy was able
to downsizing a lot more.
Murphy was able to turn it against her by saying, "Hey, she made $48 million in 2009. If she'd only taken $8 million less, she could have kept the bottom 10% that she ended up letting go." And then those people would not be out of.
It's not charity. Why is it charity?
Because
we should have like Doug Hardy or Christine Stewart do a mock debate. I'll take Linda, you take Murphy, and let's do the debate like it ought to be done. What do you think about that?
Or like what was shown on The Last Word by Lawrence O'Donnell. He actually played the debate that was run on The West Wing as this is something that we should be seeing and we're not. I thought that
The West Wing is a great show, and it's you know, it's my favorite show ever. Is really what it is, and I know exactly what the episode is.
Is Alan Alda and Victor Cifuentes?
Yeah,
yep.
Alan Alda was there. It was great. I would. I don't know if we could do that necessarily, but
it would be nice to try.
But you know what? let's see if Christine would do that for us. Facilitate a debate and
A mock
use
debate.
the question, a mock debate. You and me. I'll be Linda, and you be. And I'm not putting a dress on.
No lipstick
and
either.
You be Murphy. We'll ask the same questions.
Yep.
We'll get the list of questions that they asked, and then that'll just be the format. But beyond that, she can ask any other questions that we want. Let's do that.
The problem is, it wouldn't be realistic because you actually might be able to think on your feet. It was kind of obvious from the debate that Linda sorely lacks the ability to think on her feet, whereas Murphy is hands down one of the best. And he allowed that to show towards the latter half of the actual debate this last Sunday.
I don't really know if he's one of the best. I mean, I think this is his first debate, isn't it?
It's
No
not
one's
his
debated
first.
him
It's not his
Congress.
first. Yeah, I think in fact he did debate Nancy Johnson the first time around,
Did he really?
and it was a mistake on Johnson's part, if I recall correctly. She didn't want to give him any credence whatsoever, and I believe that it was within the last 3 or 4 weeks of the election cycle she finally agreed to one, and it was done by the who's the neutral party that almost always runs debates? The Women's League?
CBS.
No. The Women's League of Voters.
Oh, I don't know. Okay.
It was the Women's League of Voters, and he showed that he had some chops.
Well, then again, he's debating Nancy Johnson. Who? Come on, really?
Yeah, but she figured that she was, so used to this stuff that she could sleepwalk through it. She didn't sleepwalk through it, but he definitely showed his mettle with that. And ever since he's been on the House floor, he's been able to bob and weave with the best of them, and there's no question that one's debating skills does get better once you've been down in Washington for 1 or 2 terms.
Well, it gets better. I don't know. That's a subjective. You might be able to dodge questions better, but I don't really know if you become a better debater. You might actually make an argument to become a worse debater.
Well,
You don't actually get out any information. You just kind of you dodge. Eventually, you got to throw a punch.
You do? Well, yeah, but if you listen to some of the guys and gals talking on the floor, they don't. There are times when they don't hold any punches. Hey, Jen's calling in. Let's see if I can.
All right. Well, no, go talk to Jen.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to you. Bye. Okay, here we go. Hey, Jen.
Hello.
Hello there. You just.
I was hoping to talk to both you guys.
I know. I'm sorry. I was going to say you just kicked Brian off.
I didn't want to kick Brian off. I wanted to talk to both you guys.
Well, did you hear what his suggestion was?
I love the idea of the debate. I love it so much.
The problem is, if you were to compare it to like West Wing, he gets to be Alan Alda. I'm not sure I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think we should have another comparison. And by the way, Chris Murphy has debated several times, and I think that was actually evident in his performance.
That, frankly, he did start off a little on the cold side, okay? And
well, yeah.
And it was, and my having actually seen the debate, Brian did too. He was actually there. It was pretty evident that both the candidates were having to trot out their talking points.
Well, that's their job, sort of.
It is sort of their
or one
job.
Of their jobs.
But after the first 15, 20 minutes or so, Chris then lit up, and he became much more engaging. There was only one question that he did not answer. Every other question, though, he pretty much answered on point. and then pointedly pointed out when she was not.
Yes.
Which was painful, almost. You remember the movie Westworld with
No.
Yul Brynner?
No, I'm afraid I don't.
And it was kind of sort of like another movie from that same time frame, The Stepford Wives.
Yes, I love the Stepford Wives.
Same premise. Yul was this cowboy in a Western dude setup that was set up for tourists, and you find out partway through that he's a robot.
Ah.
Okay. Linda had certain robotic qualities to her when she was in the latter part of the debate.
Mm-hmm.
Once she had gotten the talking points out, she was having a hard time talking about anything else.
Well, that could have been predicted, I think, from everything we've heard about her sort of lack of interest or willingness at all to respond to any press questions. I would have been surprised if she had been able to come back with something spontaneous.
The one question that Chris didn't answer, he kind of sort of did.
Yeah.
Why aren't your campaigns more transparent? Why aren't you telling reporters where you're going to be on any given day? His initial response was, well, at least I'm talking to editorial boards. I mean, yeah, granted, that's not being transparent, and that's not responding to the transparency question. I get that, but it was also pointedly showing how Linda was not engaging the press at all.
At all. Well, my joke is that the reason she went through 3 press secretaries is that they had nothing to do, so they quit out of boredom.
Cue crickets, yeah.
But I do think it would have been nice if Chris had directly answered that, because it is, he was supposed to go on Where We Live or Where We Vote or wherever they call it when they are interviewing candidates, and he didn't. And
Where We Live,
yeah. Yeah, he's often gone on that program, and I thought that was very kind of peculiar of that campaign not to go on that show, because he's done really well on that show. So I thought I was disappointed in that, frankly.
My prediction, in the debate, in the first 15 minutes, Linda McMahon says, "Shame on you," to Chris Murphy. Okay. Not once, twice. Okay. And it was after the second one that he pretty much came to life, and then she began to shut down. It was almost as if she was programmed to say that if she heard certain cues. And then once she got that out of the way, there wasn't a whole lot else to say.
That's what I heard. I mean, I think I read on My Left Nutmegger somewhere that if anyone thinks that was a spontaneous response, she'd actually done that somewhere else. And
yeah, Colin McEnroe had that in his blog as well.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
And I have to agree with Colin on that one. The fact of the matter is, though, I am willing to bet you that the next round of ads that come from the Murphy camp is going to be, "Shame on you, Linda."
That would be great.
You have one of those outtakes where, from the Blumenthal campaign, where she's in the ring and she's kneeing some guy in the groin, and you see him go down, and then you hear, "Shame on you, Linda, for purveying smut to children."
Oh, that would be so great. Did you see Susan Campbell's piece? Was it today?
No.
Well, she posted on Facebook today. It was great.
What does she have to say?
Well, I mean, she basically said, anyone who thinks that Linda is a great jobs creator, look at the jobs created and look how poorly she's taking care of her workers, by all these wrestlers dying, and look at how she's treating the people who actually consume what WWE provides by, showing horrific things to children and showing horrific images of women. So, anyone who thinks that she's going to be, a responsible
senator.
Yeah.
Forget it. Well,
Sorry.
the other thing is too, all right, I disagree with Brian about Brian's take on. There was a question that was posed to the candidates about how did the recession impact you personally? And Murphy's response was, well, it made me fight harder. It made me, and he then recited about 3 different bills that he'd worked on in Congress. He said, on the other hand, Linda McMahon in 2009 made $48 million and laid off 10% of her workforce.
Ooh.
When she could have taken $8 million of that $48 million, applied it to her business, and not had to have fired anyone.
Exactly. Nicely done.
Brian thought, well, it was a good business decision. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, no. This is Ms. Job Creator who is now canning 10% of her workforce because she still wants to make $48 million.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Especially when you're talking about being a jobs creator. I mean, maybe it was a good business decision, but if you're going to go around talking about,
if you're touting your credentials as the job creator and Chris Murphy's not, this is the response. And I thought that was well done on Chris's part. Now, I haven't gotten to any of the other news.
Well, have you talked yet? Because I do think this is interesting about the bump from this debate, and also
I mentioned it in passing as far in talking with Brian about how the Rasmussen poll had showed likely voters favoring Chris Murphy by 46% to McMahon's 45%, with a 4.5% margin of error, which means that it's still a toss-up, but now it's a toss-up in Murphy's favor as opposed to McMahon's. But when you factored in the folks who were, as Rasmussen would point out, leaners, the people who initially had no preference, but after a follow-up question indicated a willingness to support one candidate or the other, it was 51% Murphy, 46% McMahon, meaning that McMahon only picked up 1% of leaners, whereas Murphy picked up 5%. And that is a telltale.
I find this fascinating because I mentioned this to you in an email earlier today, that people say that debates don't matter. And not only have we seen this poll change the results, but that Mitt Romney actually, was it today that the Pew poll came out?
Yesterday.
It shows him ahead for the first time.
48, 47.
This is my theory that I was telling you about early, is that the debates may be one of the very few venues where voters can actually see a relatively unfiltered view of the candidates. That especially TV news, isn't really news anymore. It's just a bunch of partisan people, and that voters really need to see the candidates to make a decision. So I think maybe debates matter now.
I'm not sure that the first senatorial debate matters as much, and here's why. It was shown at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. A lot of people are going to church. A lot of people, if they're not church going, are doing stuff with the family at that point in time. Some folks may be having a late breakfast. You're not going to tune in to a political debate unless you are really a news junkie, a political wonk, or otherwise just obsessed with politics.
True.
The Thursday night debate will be different. That's prime time. It's going to be an hour before the vice presidential debate, and I can guarantee you, even though it's on Fox, you're going to have a lot of people tuning into that one.
Yeah.
Because, granted, it's not ABC, NBC, CBS. It is Fox. Nonetheless, it is going to, you're likely going to have a panel that will be almost as good as what we had. Brian didn't like the panel so much. Thought that Angela Dias was not asking very good questions. I found that to be interesting, given that Angela Dias is the news director of WTIC.
Why didn't he like her questions?
One of the questions was, how did the recession impact you personally? And his take on that was, well, what's McMahon going to say? I had to get rid of one of my 7 cars? And, Murphy,
That
you
it
would
was an unfair
expect
question, that it was weighted, sort of.
that it was sort of weighted, and frankly, you weren't going to get a really serious response.
Mm.
Okay?
Yeah.
I get that. Nonetheless, I found it to be intriguing. And it was intriguing because all McMahon talked about was job creation, job creation, job creation. And, it was like the robot hit a glitch. And
Right. So it was
Whereas,
very revealing, ultimately.
whereas Murphy was saying, you know what? I ended up dealing with a person who, lost their job. I ended up dealing with a person who had, because they lost their job for a 2-week period, were not insured. All of a sudden, during that 2 weeks that they're not insured, their kid gets diagnosed with cancer and thereafter is not insurable because of the pre-existing condition. Wow. Okay. I fought harder for affordable health care at that point after that because I knew this is what the recession was doing. And then he turns to Linda and says, Linda, on the other hand, made $48 million and fired 10% of her workforce. I thought the counterpoint was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. We're going to take 30 seconds to actually do something about bills. So hang on for just a second, because I would also like to get your take on something else that came out in the debate. Deepwater Seafood of Avon. Have you been to the only fish market in Farmington Valley? Deepwater is located on Route 44 and is open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of the best things about Deepwater is their fish are fresh. 2 to 3 deliveries daily to meet your needs. Deepwater has a menu of grilled fish items, scampi, fish and chips, soups, bisques, and chowders. For your catering needs, authentic paella, cedar plank salmon sides, and always the traditional New England clam bake. And even though it's August, the clam bakes are awesome. Deepwater also has the very best shrimp cocktail that you'll find anywhere. Call in your order at 860-676-9657, and they'll have your order ready for pickup when you arrive. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, not just for the halibut. And also, let's not forget our friends at centralctdental.com. Doctors Camp, Sambor, and Lupini for the serious issues or routine checkups. Go nowhere else. It's easy to get to on the Plainville-Farmington line. Call 860-747-5761 or make an appointment online at centralctdental.com. McMahon's response to the DOMA question. Did you hear about that?
I did.
And apparently, as a result of her quote flip-flop, I don't agree that it's necessarily a flip-flop. But she has now lost the full endorsement of the Family Institute. I know that that's shocking and makes some of us very unhappy.
Us?
Yeah. Republican U.S. Senate candidate lost the full endorsement of the Family Institute on Monday thanks to her change of position on the Defense of Marriage Act, calling for its repeal. Both during and after the senatorial debate this last Sunday, McMahon stated that she had changed her mind on DOMA over the course of the last 2 years and would favor repealing DOMA now. Those comments have caused Peter Wolfgang, executive director of the Family Institute, to say that his initial endorsement of McMahon is no longer accurate. Query, what does that mean? No longer accurate. Because he says, and I quote, "I'm still voting for Linda because her victory would mean the end of Roe v. Wade." I'm sorry, could mean the end of Roe v. Wade. But because Linda McMahon flip-flopped and now supports the repeal of DOMA, the one federal law that stops Connecticut's judicially imposed redefinition of marriage from being imposed on the rest of the nation, my September 18th endorsement of her is no longer accurate.
Yeah, does that mean he doesn't withdraw what's a half endorsement, or what's a less than full endorsement, I guess is my question.
I'm still voting for her, he says.
Yeah,
I'm still voting for her.
I just love that she's lost a full endorsement. So that just means like all he's doing is voting for her, that there's not an actual endorsement? Like, what does a half endorsement or a partial endorsement look like?
Well,
I think someone should ask him that.
not only that, but also, it's maybe a qualified endorsement instead of an unqualified endorsement, which is
I'd
kind
like
of
to know
funny
what the
given the
original
candidate
endorsement
we're
looked
dealing
like, and then what it looks like now.
with. You didn't get the pun, did you?
What?
The unqualified endorsement. But anyways. Sorry.
I just love my endorsement is no longer accurate. That's just such a weird way to put it. Like, what he'd like to say is, I take it all back. She's not in my corner, but he can't do that because she's a Republican.
Not only that, but also she's likely to, vote in favor of a law that would do away with Roe v. Wade.
Exactly.
And which he came out and explicitly stated. But
right.
What is your take on her comments about DOMA? Do you think she flip-flopped?
No, I think she was actually stating her actual position, and she made it seem earlier as if that wasn't her position. That's my feeling.
Well, it's pretty clear that in 2010, she specifically stated, I like DOMA. Marriage is between a man and a woman. And that's why she was saying, particularly caught on tape by CT News Junkie, by the way, as saying that her position had evolved over the last 2 years. Now, that sounds remarkably similar to someone else who had changed their position on gay marriage. That would be the president. He said that his position was an evolving position and had changed over the last 2 years.
Well,
that's why he's now in favor of it.
You know what? I have to say that I am in favor of people's positions evolving. If we had to expect people to keep, their opinions no matter what.
Right.
I mean, but I don't know.
The question is whether or not either one of them changed their positions for political expediency.
Oh, I think Barack Obama definitely changed his opinion because he seemed pretty firmly opposed to gay marriage for quite a while.
Which, by the way, was contrary to the position that his church, I'm not talking about his specific church in Illinois.
Right.
He belongs to the United Church of Christ, the Congregationalists.
Right.
They have been open and affirming for the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So his position was contrary to the overarching church position.
Right.
Okay, maybe not his particular church, but the church in general.
Yeah.
And I had less of a hardship believing the honesty of his statement that, hey, my opinion has changed. My thoughts on this have evolved. I'm having a harder time swallowing that with Linda McMahon. And it's not because I don't like Linda McMahon. It's that Sunday was the first time that we actually heard this articulated since 2010.
Yes.
She didn't publicly state this before. We didn't have any indication, press-wise or otherwise, statements on her website, whatever, that she was changing her opinion.
Right.
Or that she might change her opinion. It was, the last known statement was what you have from 2010. I support DOMA.
Well, I mean, and Mitt Romney is a perfect example of someone who actually does flip-flop. If you looked at the debate last week, all of a sudden he was taking all these moderate positions, which must have come somewhat to a surprise of his conservative backers. So, was he moderate and then was conservative and then switched back again? I mean,
apparently it was a surprise to the president too.
I wish it had been more of a or whatever. We will not go into that.
Apparently, Chris noted about 2 or 3 times outside aspects, political aspects. Okay. He when Linda had lobbed the "you cut Medicaid again by $700 billion," by the second time he responded, and he specifically said, "I'm not going to be like the president who let Mitt Romney off of this lie. I'm not going to let you tell the people that I voted to cut $700 billion in benefits, because that's not what happened."
That's interesting.
He said the $700 billion went to the insurance companies who were dealing with programs with Medicaid. Those got cut. They were not direct benefits. They did not involve individuals whatsoever. So I did not vote to cut $700 billion in Medicaid benefits, because these were subsidies that were going to the insurance companies that didn't need them in the first place. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And in another instance, it was a question on a McMahon policy. It was about job creation. And his response was, well, this is one of Linda McMahon's Mitt Romney 47% comments. I thought, oh my God.
Right.
And it went right over McMahon's head. This was about 3/4 of the way through the debate.
Uh-huh.
And already you could see signs of her being on the ropes, because...
As it were.
Well, my title for the piece that I wrote about the debate was First Senatorial Debate, a Smackdown, Murphy on Top. I couldn't resist.
I know, exactly.
And it's not like he got a clear pin necessarily, but it's pretty clear that by the end of the debate, she could not get out of there fast enough. And he had the look of, hey, I'm just warming up. Brian's assessment was that he was like an old car. Took a long time to warm up. That was also Colin McEnroe's assessment. My assessment was not so much that he was an old car warming up, nor did it take him a long time to warm up. He was having to get his talking points out of the way so he wouldn't get yelled at by his campaign manager.
That is probably true, actually.
I'm trying to do this in the first 5 to 10 minutes and then watch me fly.
Exactly.
And,
that sounds very true.
And that is, it was after the second Shame on You, which was in the first 15 minutes, that he took fire. And I don't think that he was upset with the Shame on You, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, okay, I've got my talking points out of the way. Now I can dance.
Right.
Watch this.
Right.
And it wasn't even a tap dance. He was rumbaying over her. It was unfortunate, because if you want to have a real debate on the issues, if you want to have a real debate on the points, let's do that. Chris was also saying that an awful lot throughout the debate. I'm here to talk about the issues. Okay, we got that. By about the 8th time, you were kind of tuning out a little bit because you'd heard it 7 times before. But he would then point out concrete points. I liked that.
Yeah.
And McMahon's response was, well, it's in my plan. Well, it's in my plan. Well, it's in my plan. It really wasn't working, because Murphy was pointing out how the plan was deficient on certain aspects of dealing with the economy. How are you going to create jobs? How are you going to go beyond just saying that you're going to create jobs? And by the way, the trickle-down theory doesn't work. We've had that redux. Look at 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. It's not working. He didn't say that exactly, but that is clearly what he was implying. And he said the trickle-down theory didn't work about 4 times in response to, I have a plan. I have a plan.
Well, it is interesting that debate and the presidential debate, I think, were two interesting object lessons in what makes a good debate. What's a useful debate for viewers? It helps to have a good structure. I mean, whatever Brian might think about the questioners, at least, I mean, there was a very set structure, and I think that was one of the biggest problems.
There's no question. Jim Lehrer lost control of the debate.
So sad.
Pretty
I just
early
felt like
on.
it didn't matter how bad Barack was or how. I mean, I didn't think Romney was actually very good, but it was hard to tell without a format.
Well, here's why folks thought that Mitt Romney had done so well. He didn't stumble. He was very comfortable with what he was saying and how he was saying it. And he never fumbled. So when you have, in response, the president having a couple of deer in the headlight moments,
right?
By comparison, Mitt looked stronger. Ergo, he won. Also, he ran roughshod over Jim Lehrer.
Right.
And there were 2 or 3 points where Lehrer had asked a specific question. Romney not only did not answer it, was completely unapologetic about not answering it, but basically told Lehrer, here's why I'm not answering your question.
Well, and what's interesting, and I just have to mention, by the way, I had a debate watching party last week. I think we were the only 8 people who thought that Barack won. I mean, we were shocked to see the response. I mean, we really were, and it was funny because we were really irritated with what Mitt Romney was doing, and I think other people perceived that as being, aggressive and assertive. And we thought it was rude and, sort of took the format out of the debate and didn't allow for so the process to happen. So, and we thought Barack was being funny and that he didn't really need to punch back because he just, sort of letting Romney hang himself. It was just very interesting. I mean, later when I sort of listened to some of the comments, I did agree. I think we were too easy on him, but I thought Barack actually got a couple, I shouldn't say that, the president got some good licks in, and I thought he was being presidential. I thought for him to have gone after Romney in a really aggressive way, would not have been presidential. But it's interesting. I'll be very interested to see the next one.
Not only that, but you would also have the argument that by going after him, you are legitimatizing the candidacy.
Yes.
You are making the candidacy more than it already is. My take on this is, all right. The other thing, the president was distracted. He really was distracted. No, it wasn't just his 20th anniversary, although that was kind of big too. Remember what was happening at the time?
No.
Syria was bombing Turkey.
Oh, my God, that's right, of course.
And Turkey had not yet responded,
yeah.
although they were thinking about shooting some mortars, and they did. Okay,
right.
So here you had the Middle East, the tinderbox, the thing that Mitt Romney likes to say is Barack Obama's fault. An unsteady or unstable Middle East was actually teetering on the brink of an all-out shooting war. Hell yeah, I'd be distracted too if I was the president of the United States.
Right.
And I was trying to think about where the USS Reagan was and where other assets could be that could address the situation so that you could prevent a complete conflagration from actually erupting.
Yeah.
So I'd be a little distracted too.
His actual job was on his mind, which should have been a credit to him.
And in all honesty, had I been president, I would have been tempted to say, you know what? Now's not a good time for us to do the debate. Can we do this tomorrow?
Yeah.
I got a little thing going on here, and there'll be more about this a little later on. Given the fact that there was no U.S. response, I gather that there was a decision to go forward with the debate anyways.
That is an interesting point. I mean, how big would a situation, I don't know, I'm not sure what the right term would be, how big would a situation have to be in order to actually move a debate to another time?
There were innocent Turkish citizens who died thanks to the bombardment of Syria.
Right.
There was an outright provocation for war. And Turkey showing an unbelievable amount of patience because all they did was to fire back across the border. That's all they did. I mean, hell, if I was in charge of Turkey right now, I'd be saying, wait a minute. The president only has 3 different strong points. He doesn't have full control of the army.
Right.
I could just walk right in there. All right. And some of the Syrians might actually look at me as the liberator. And why that didn't happen is a real good question. And I have to give kudos to the folks who are the civilian leaders of Turkey for not taking advantage of that situation.
Yeah.
But the deer in the headlights look wasn't because President Barack Obama didn't know how to answer the damn question. The look was because he was thinking, do I send the carrier in?
Yeah.
And how will this impact the economy? I don't know. Hey, we thank you for calling in. I know that you are not doing all that well, and I hope that things improve in the near future.
I know. My back is killing me. But,
hey,
and next
I wasn't
week
going to spill the
I have a thing
beans.
of professional things, so I can't do it next week, but definitely after, and I'll definitely try to drive up there so I can actually see you.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, be on camera.
There will be things that we will talk about next week that we didn't talk about this week because, for instance, the Richard LaPointe case is something that is not that could be timely next week anyways. You've been listening to Newstalk Tonight. I've been joined by both Brian Parker and Jen Just, my erstwhile co-host. And tune in next week. We're going to have a full show. We are brought to you by Gateway Financial Planners, Sherpa Technologies, CentralCTDental.com, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, Global Indemnity Insurance, Sandits Travel, and Budwitz and Meyerjack. I'm Dave Moore. We'll see you next week.
You're on the horn. onthehorn.com.